I always thought if my marriage ever ended, it'd be because life just wore us down. Maybe we'd drift apart. Maybe we'd fight too much. Hell, maybe I'd be the one to screw up. But I never thought it would end this way. It was funny, really. Watching my wife put on a short skirt, fix her lipstick in the hallway mirror, and tell me she was going to see a counselor because she felt stuck in our marriage. Like I was some kind of fool. Like I wouldn't notice the perfume she hadn't worn in years, the way she smoothed down her blouse before grabbing her purse. Like I wouldn't realize that she was lying right to my face. Of course, she was cheating. I knew it the second I saw it. The only problem? She thought I didn't. And that played a very cruel trick on her. I could have confronted her right then and there. I could have yelled, slammed my fist on the table, demanded answers. But no, that would have been too easy, too predictable. Instead, I smiled and let her walk out that door. Because I had already made my decision. I was going to make her regret this for the rest of her life. And believe me, the way I did it was awesome. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start from the beginning. Lisa and I met in college, back when we were just two broke kids trying to figure out what the hell we wanted in life. I was studying business, she was in communications. She caught my eye at a house party, standing in the kitchen, arguing with some guy about the best way to grill a steak. She had this fire in her, this confidence. I liked that. I walked over, made some dumb joke about how she should just let the guy burn the steak and learn his lesson. She laughed, and that was it for me. We started dating, moved in together right after graduation, and got married at 25. That was 13 years ago. I was 38 now. Lisa was 37. We built a solid life together, nice house, decent jobs. I ran a small logistics company, nothing flashy, but it paid well. Lisa worked in marketing at some big corporate firm downtown. She always had that drive, that need to prove herself. I supported her every step of the way. And for the most part, our marriage had been good. Sure, things changed over the years. The honeymoon phase didn't last forever, and life got busy. But I never thought we were unhappy. I never thought she was unhappy. Until now. It was a regular Tuesday evening. Nothing special about it. The sun had set, casting a golden light through the blinds. The house smelled like dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, something warm and familiar. I had just finished my plate and was about to get up when Lisa spoke. "Can we sit for a minute?" I knew that tone. Serious. Careful. Like she had something big to say. I turned, taking her in. She sat at the table, hands wrapped around her tea mug, but she wasn't drinking. Just holding it. Almost like she needed something steady to grip. Sure. I sat back down, watching her. She took a deep breath. "I think I need to see a counselor." I blinked. That wasn't what I had expected. "A counselor?" She nodded, her fingers tightening around the mug. "Yeah, I feel stuck. Like we're in a rut. I think professional help could be good for me. For us." There it was. For us. That little addition at the end, like it was an afterthought. Like she had rehearsed this conversation and decided it would sound better that way. I wasn't thrilled about it. But I also wasn't the kind of guy to argue against therapy. If she needed help, fine. "If that's what you need," I said, keeping my voice steady. Lisa let out a breath, like she had been holding it. "Thank you for understanding." But even as I said the words, something in my gut told me there was more to this. I looked at her again, really looked. The fresh coat of nail polish, the way her blonde hair was curled just right. The fitted blouse, the way it hugged her a little too well. The skirt, black, tight, a little too short for a casual evening at home. And then, the perfume. Not the everyday kind. Not the light floral scent she wore to work. No, this was different. Richer. The kind she used to wear on our date nights. The kind I hadn't smelled on her in years. She was going somewhere after this. And I had a feeling it wasn't to see a counselor. "When's your first session?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Tonight," she said quickly, standing up. "Actually, I should get going soon." Just like that. Not even a conversation about it. No details, no mention of who this counselor was or what they specialized in. Just tonight. I watched as she grabbed her purse, slipping her phone inside. Then she hesitated. Turned back to me. "I love you, you know." Something about the way she said it felt different. Like she was reminding herself, not me. I forced a small smile. "I love you too." She nodded, then walked out the front door. I sat there, staring at my empty plate. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was reading too much into things. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. Something was wrong. And I was going to find out exactly what it was. Lisa started going to her therapy sessions twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. She never missed. Said it was important, and I wanted to believe her. But something wasn't sitting right. A couple of weeks in, I started noticing little changes. Lisa was happier. Not in a normal way, but in a too-good-to-be-true kind of way. She was glowing, smiling more, humming while she cooked dinner, leaving the house with a kind of energy I hadn't seen in years. She started dressing differently, too. Not just on therapy days, every day. Her sweatpants and oversized t-shirts got replaced by jeans that hugged her a little more, fitted tops, a little extra effort with her hair and makeup, even when she wasn't going anywhere special. She started working out. Not just a few sit-ups before bed, either. She was serious about it. Woke up early to go jogging before work. Bought a whole set of new leggings, a pair of sneakers that probably cost more than I wanted to know. Just trying to feel better, she said when I asked about it. Therapy is helping me realize I need to take better care of myself. I nodded, because what was I supposed to say? No, you should stay exactly the same? I was happy for her. Really. I wanted her to be happy. But deep down, something about it didn't sit right. And it wasn't just the changes, it was the way she was with me. She wasn't distant. If anything, she was the opposite. More affectionate. More engaged in our conversations. But it felt off. Like she was trying to act normal. Like she was making sure I noticed how good things were between us. Like she was covering something up. One night, after dinner, she sat across from me at the table, sipping on a glass of wine. I really think these sessions are working, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I feel lighter. That's great, I said, watching her closely. She smiled, almost to herself, and took another sip. And that's when I asked, why don't I come with you to one of these sessions? She didn't react right away. Just tilted her head slightly, like she was surprised. Like she hadn't expected me to ask. Then she smiled small, knowing. It's not time yet. That was it. That was all she said. Not, maybe in a few weeks. Not, let me ask my therapist. Just, it's not time yet. A red flag shot up in my head so fast, I could almost hear it waving. Because therapy, real therapy, is supposed to help both people in a marriage. Not just one. If she really felt like we were stuck, if she really wanted to work through things, then why was I being kept out of it? I forced a smile. Okay. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You'll come when the time is right. I promise. And for some reason, that made me feel worse. A few weeks passed, and Lisa kept up with her therapy. She came home glowing after every session, smiling like she had unlocked some great mystery about herself. She started journaling, lighting candles around the house like we lived in a spa, and talking about self-discovery more than any normal person should. It felt rehearsed, forced, and no matter how hard I tried to shake the feeling, something about it rubbed me the wrong way. Then one night, after dinner, she casually dropped it into conversation. My therapist thinks it's time for you to join me for a session. I looked up from my plate. Oh yeah. Yeah, she said, nodding enthusiastically. I think it could be really helpful for us both. For weeks, I had been asking to go. Why now? But I kept my face neutral. I wasn't about to tip my hand. Sure, I said, cutting into my steak. Let's do it. Lisa smiled like I had given the right answer. Like she expected me to say yes. The following Thursday, I found myself in front of an upscale office building downtown. Not some cozy little clinic with worn-out couches and a receptionist who looked like someone's grandmother. No, this place had tinted windows, a sleek modern sign that just said Carter and Associates, and a parking lot filled with expensive cars. I walked in and was greeted by an all-white waiting room. White walls, white floors, white furniture. The kind of place that screamed, we charge $300 an hour just to listen to you complain. Lisa was already there, sitting with her legs crossed, scrolling on her phone like she hadn't a care in the world. She looked good. Too good. Like she had dressed up for something other than therapy. Ready? She asked, slipping her phone into her bag. Sure, I said, standing up. She took my hand, tight, almost too tight, and led me through the glass doors. I don't know what I expected. Some old guy in a sweater vest, maybe. Wire-rimmed glasses, a worn-out notebook, a tired smile that said I've heard it all before. But instead, I met him. Dr. Andrew Carter. Tall. Fit. Dark hair with just a little bit of gray at the temples. Sharp jawline. A crisp white dress shirt rolled up at the sleeves like he had just finished lifting weights instead of preparing for a therapy session. I had never hated a man so fast in my life. You must be Jake, he said, stepping forward with a firm handshake, flashing a perfect white smile. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." I took his hand, squeezing just hard enough to let him know I wasn't impressed. "Yeah, same." Lisa beamed between us like we were two old friends finally meeting. "Come in. Sit down," Carter said, gesturing toward the couch. Lisa sat close to me, closer than she usually did at home. She rested her hand on my knee, smiled at me, like we were on some morning talk show about happy marriages and how to save them. It was an act. I could feel it. "So, Jake," Carter said, leaning forward, lacing his fingers together. "Lisa's told me a lot about you." "Has she?" I asked, glancing at her. Lisa gave me a small, nervous smile. "She has," he said, nodding. "She speaks very highly of you." I almost laughed at that. "She also says you're a little skeptical about therapy." "Not skeptical," I said. "Just never needed it before." "I understand that," Carter said smoothly. "A lot of people feel that way. But relationships are complicated, and sometimes an outside perspective can help strengthen them." Lisa nodded along like he was delivering a sermon. I shifted in my seat. The whole thing felt staged, like a well-rehearsed script. Lisa spoke when she was supposed to. She squeezed my hand at the right moments. She looked at me just long enough to seem engaged, but not long enough for it to be real. And Carter? He was too calm, too charming. He asked me about our marriage, how I felt about Lisa, about our history together. And every time I answered, I could feel Lisa's eyes on me, like she was waiting for me to say something wrong. "It sounds like you and Lisa have built a strong foundation," Carter said, smiling. "I'd like to think so," I said. Lisa nodded quickly. "Too quickly." "That's good," Carter said. "Because a lot of couples forget about that. They focus on the problems instead of the core of their relationship." "And what do you think our problems are?" I asked, leaning forward. Carter smiled, sitting back in his chair like he had been expecting that question. "I think Lisa has been feeling unheard," he said simply. Lisa squeezed my hand again. "And you, Jake, you seem hesitant." "Hesitant about what?" "About fully opening up. About being vulnerable in this space." I let that sink in for a second. Then I nodded. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I just don't like feeling like I walked into a performance." Lisa stiffened next to me. Carter only smiled. "What makes you feel that way?" I looked at Lisa. She looked away. I looked back at Carter, meeting his eyes. "Call it a gut feeling," I said. The session dragged on. Lisa talked. Carter nodded. I played along, answering when I had to. But the whole time, I felt like I was watching something scripted. Lisa's hand lingered in mine for just a second too long. She laughed at Carter's jokes a little too easily. She glanced at him when she thought I wasn't looking. When the session finally ended, Carter stood up, shook my hand again, and gave me another perfect, polished smile. "I think this was a great first step," he said. "I hope to see you again soon." "Yeah," I said. "We'll see." Lisa practically floated out of the office, her fingers still gripping my hand like we had just won a prize. "That was good, right?" she asked as we walked back to the car. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had just been played. I wasn't stupid. I saw the way she had looked at Dr. Carter in that couple's session. The way she laughed just a little too easily. The way she squeezed my hand like she was putting on a show. And I saw how he looked at her, that effortless charm, that too smooth smile. It didn't take a genius to put two and two together. So, when she walked out the door one evening in that tight black skirt, the one she hadn't worn in years, I made up my mind. I was going to follow her. I waited exactly 5 minutes before grabbing my keys and heading out. I wasn't new to this. I wasn't about to tailgate her like some idiot in a bad detective movie. I kept my distance, just enough to see her taillights through the traffic. She drove like she always did, calm, steady, nothing out of the ordinary. But I wasn't fooled. I expected her to take a left at the intersection, the way she always did when heading to Carter's office. But she didn't. Instead, she went straight. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I stayed behind her, not too close, watching as she weaved through downtown, past office buildings and coffee shops, past places I knew weren't her destination. Then she turned into a parking lot. Not just any parking lot. A motel parking lot. I pulled into a lot across the street, keeping my lights off. Lisa parked near the side entrance, tucked away from the main road. She didn't get out right away. She sat there, staring at her phone for a few seconds. Then, as if she had made a decision, she grabbed her purse, adjusted her skirt, and stepped out of the car. She walked quickly, head down, disappearing inside through the side door. I just sat there, staring. A motel. She wasn't getting therapy. She was getting something else. Something I already knew. Something she thought I was too blind to see. And that was her biggest mistake. I sat in my truck across from that damn motel for what felt like an hour. Maybe longer. Just staring at the door Lisa had walked through. I wanted to believe there was another explanation. Maybe her therapist had sessions in a motel for some bizarre reason. Maybe she had a work meeting that required a dimly lit room with peeling wallpaper and cigarette burns in the carpet. Yeah, right. Deep down, I already knew the truth. I had known it the second she stepped out of the car, adjusting her skirt like she was about to go on a date. The second she disappeared inside without hesitation. Still, I didn't move. I didn't storm in there like some guy in a bad movie, demanding answers. I didn't need a dramatic scene. I needed proof. That's when I called Mike. Mike had been my friend for over a decade. We used to work together before he started his own security business. The guy had seen it all: cheating spouses, shady business deals, people trying to cover their tracks. I told him everything, and he didn't even hesitate. You go in there now, she'll just lie? Get a detective. A detective? I repeated, gripping the phone. Yeah, someone who knows what they're doing. Someone who can get you the kind of proof she can't talk her way out of. I didn't argue. I just asked for a name. Mike gave me one. By the next morning, I had a meeting with a private investigator. The guy's name was Dan Richards. Late 50s, ex-military, the kind of man who looked like he had seen too much and cared too little. His office was small, tucked between a pawn shop and a dry cleaner. Nothing fancy, but I didn't need fancy. I needed results. He listened to my story, nodding along, asking the right questions. You got a feeling, but you need proof, he said, tapping his pen against his notepad. Exactly. All right. I'll need a week. Maybe less. I shook his hand, paid the retainer, and left. Now all I had to do was wait. A week later, I got the call. Got something for you, Dan said. Come by the office. I drove there faster than I should have, my hands gripping the wheel so hard. Part of me already knew what I was about to see. But another part, the stupid, hopeful part, wanted to be wrong. Dan didn't say much when I walked in. Just handed me a manila folder and leaned back in his chair. Take a look. I opened it. And there it was. Lisa, wrapped around Dr. Carter like a damn newlywed. Timestamped photos. Videos. A phone log detailing every call and text. I flipped through the pictures, my pulse hammering in my ears. There was no mistaking it. No misinterpreting the way she looked at him, the way she leaned into him, the way they disappeared into that motel room together. She had played me. For weeks, maybe longer. I closed the folder, swallowing the rage burning in my chest. Dan watched me carefully. You all right? He asked. I exhaled slowly, setting the folder down. Yeah, but I wasn't. Not yet. Because now, it was my turn to play her. I sat in my truck outside Dan's office for a long time, gripping the folder so tight my fingers ached. The evidence was there, plain as day. Lisa and Dr. Carter, wrapped up in each other, slipping into that motel like a pair of teenagers who thought no one was watching. But I had been watching. I could have confronted her that night. Could have thrown the folder on the kitchen table and demanded she explain herself. But what would that accomplish? A fight? Fake tears? A long, drawn-out speech about how she had been unhappy and needed to find herself? No, I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. I wasn't just going to throw her out. I was going to bury her first. The first step was money. I wasn't stupid. I had made sure from the beginning that the house was mine. Bought before we got married, paid for in my name. Lisa had never contributed to the mortgage. Not a single payment. She liked to act like everything in the house belonged to both of us. But legally, it didn't. Still, we had joint bills. Utilities, groceries, shared accounts. Those had to be dealt with. So, over the next few days, I made some changes. I split every bill in half, moving what I could into my name alone. I canceled the subscriptions she used but never paid for. Transferred my direct deposits into a private account she had no access to. I didn't touch her money, let her think nothing had changed. She never noticed. Next came the legal side. I met with my lawyer, an old friend from college who had seen too many men get blindsided in situations like mine. I handed him the folder from Dan, letting him flip through the photos, the phone records, the timestamps. Damn, he muttered, shaking his head. Yeah. He sighed, setting the folder down. You ready for this? More than ready. We went over everything. The assets, the legalities, the steps I needed to take to make sure Lisa got exactly what she deserved, which was nothing. She's not getting a dime, my lawyer assured me. Not with this kind of proof. Good. Once the paperwork was ready, once everything was in place, I moved on to the final step. The setup. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through our old text conversations. The ones where she had been sweet, where she had sent little heart emojis and "I love you" messages like she hadn't been sneaking around behind my back. Then I typed out a message. Dinner? I want to work on us. It only took a few seconds before she responded. Yes, I'd love that. She had no idea. The restaurant was fancy. The kind of place with dim lighting, soft music, and overpriced steaks that made people feel important just for being there. It wasn't the kind of place Lisa and I went to often, which made it perfect. She needed to believe this was special. She walked in right on time, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she made her way toward me. She had dressed up, tight red dress, gold earrings, hair curled just right. She looked radiant, glowing even, and I could see in her eyes that she thought she had won. She thought I had fallen for her act. Hey, you, she said, sliding into the seat across from me, flashing that same smile that used to make me weak. I smiled back. I had to play the part, just a little longer. You look beautiful, I said, pouring her a glass of wine from the bottle I had ordered before she arrived. Her smile widened, and she reached across the table, resting her hand on mine. This was such a good idea. I've been wanting us to have a night like this. I nodded, took a sip of my own wine. Yeah, it's time we talked. She exhaled, like she had been holding in some big relief. I know I've been distant, she said, her voice soft. But therapy has been helping me so much. I feel like I've really learned things about myself, about us. I let her talk. She went on about growth, about how people sometimes lose themselves in marriage and need to rediscover who they are. She spoke with confidence, like she had rehearsed this speech in the mirror 100 times. I listened, nodding at the right moments, pouring her more wine when her glass ran low, letting her believe she was in control. Then, when she finally paused to take a sip, I reached under the table and pulled out the manila folder. I slid it across the white tablecloth, right in front of her plate. Lisa frowned, confused at first. She hesitated before picking it up, flipping it open. And then, I watched her world collapse. Her face drained of color as her eyes moved over the photos, the timestamps, the records of every lie she had told me. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned each page, like she thought maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't find what she already knew was inside. I waited. Finally, she swallowed hard and looked up at me. What's this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. You tell me. Lisa's mouth opened, then closed. She set the folder down, blinking rapidly. Jake, I can explain. I leaned forward, cutting her off. I bet you can. Her lips trembled. You have until tomorrow morning to pack your things and get out of my house. She froze. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't breathe, like she hadn't really processed what I just said. Then, just as quickly, the tears came. Not quiet, gentle tears, the kind meant to manipulate. Jake, please, she whispered, reaching for my hand. It wasn't like that. It just happened. I pulled my hand back, gripping my wine glass instead. It happened, I repeated, nodding. Yeah, I can see that. She sobbed, shaking her head. It was a mistake. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. I just stared at her, taking in every word, every desperate attempt to claw her way out of the hole she had dug for herself. Lisa had been so sure she had fooled me, so sure she had everything under control. But now, she was panicking. She wiped at her face, ruining her makeup, her breath shaky. We can fix this. We can go to therapy together. Dr. Carter. I laughed, shaking my head. Dr. Carter? Her mouth snapped shut. I leaned back in my chair, looking at her like she was a stranger. Yeah, I don't think he's available for therapy anymore. Lisa let out a strangled little noise. I pushed back from the table, pulled a few bills from my wallet, and tossed them beside my plate. Dinner's on me, I said, standing up. Lisa reached for me again. Jake, please. I stepped away. Be out by morning. Then, without another word, I walked out of the restaurant, leaving her there with nothing but the proof of her own betrayal. The next morning, I woke up early. It wasn't like I had slept much anyway. Not after the way the night had gone. The way Lisa's face had crumpled when she saw the folder. The desperate way she had pleaded, reaching for me like she could somehow undo everything with a few well-placed tears. But it was too late for that. I got out of bed, stretched, and took a deep breath. Today was the day. I grabbed a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and listened to the silence of the house. The same house Lisa thought she had a claim to. The same house she had walked around in, lying to my face, believing she had everything under control. Not anymore. By the time the sun was fully up, I had already pulled her suitcases from the closet. I took my time, packing her things. Every last piece of clothing, every pair of shoes, every bit of makeup cluttering the bathroom counter. I didn't throw anything. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of saying I lost control. No, I packed everything neatly, zipped up the suitcases, and wheeled them out onto the lawn. Then I went back inside, grabbed a few trash bags, and stuffed them with everything else. Her books, her decorative nonsense that she had scattered around my house. The little throw pillows she had insisted made the couch feel cozy. All of it. By the time I was done, my front yard looked like a thrift store. I stood there for a moment, hands on my hips, surveying my work. Then I went back inside and made the final move. I changed the locks. She had until noon to pick up her things. After that, whatever was left was getting donated. I didn't call her. Didn't text. She already knew. I sat on the couch, turned on the TV, and waited. Lisa showed up just before noon. She pulled up in her car, stepping out with wide eyes as she took in the sight of her life, neatly packed and stacked outside. For a second, she just stood there. Then she turned toward the house, like she was about to march inside and demand an explanation. She reached for the front door, tried the handle. Locked. I watched from the window as realization dawned on her. Her shoulders slumped. She looked around, as if someone else might be watching, as if maybe she had some audience that could make this less humiliating. She took a deep breath, walked back down the steps, and started grabbing her things. I didn't go outside. I didn't help. She could struggle with it herself. When she finally had everything packed into her car, she just stood there, staring at the house. I waited for the knock, for the last desperate attempt. But it never came. She got in her car, drove away, and that was that. The divorce was brutal, for her. Not for me. With the evidence I had, she didn't have a leg to stand on. No spousal support. No alimony. Not a single dollar. She tried to fight it at first. Showed up with some lawyer she probably found in a strip mall, someone who promised they could negotiate. They didn't get far. When my lawyer slid the photos across the table, Lisa went pale. Her lawyer sighed. The whole thing ended quicker than she expected. Lisa got nothing. And as for her boyfriend, Dr. Carter didn't exactly step up to the plate. Turns out, he wasn't willing to risk his career for her. Maybe at first, sneaking around had been exciting, but the second real consequences were on the table. He folded. He dumped her not long after the divorce papers were signed. Lisa thought she had a future with him, thought they would ride off into the sunset together. But instead, she got left with nothing. And work? That didn't go well for her either. She had been in line for a promotion. Some big step up in her career, something she had talked about for months. Didn't happen. Instead, she got transferred. Some lower-level job in another branch, far from the city. No fancy office. No raise. Just another loss. Karma's a funny thing. Lisa thought she had everything figured out. But in the end, she lost it all. And I walked away clean. It had been months since Lisa walked out of my life for good. At first, the house felt different. Too quiet. Too still. There was no sound of her heels clicking across the hardwood. No scent of her perfume lingering in the air. The absence of her things, her throw pillows, her half-finished projects, the little knickknacks she insisted made the place feel like home, should have made it feel emptier. But the strangest thing happened. Instead of feeling lonely, I felt free. I didn't have to walk into the kitchen wondering if the smile on her face was real or if she was playing a role. I didn't have to question her late nights, her sudden need for personal growth, or whether her phone was really buzzing with work emails. The weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying, it was gone. For the first time in years, my life was mine again. I got back into my old routines. Woke up early, went for morning runs. Focused on work, finally putting energy into projects I had been putting off. I even picked up a few hobbies I had let slip away, hiking on weekends, fixing up an old motorcycle that had been gathering dust in the garage. I started enjoying my home again. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was peaceful. Lisa had spent years making me feel like we were partners, like everything was ours. But now, sitting on my own couch with a beer in hand, flipping through channels without someone sighing about another dumb action movie, I realized something. This house had never really been ours. It had always been mine. And now, it felt like it. One night, I was staying late at the office, finishing up some reports, when Sarah from accounting walked in. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe with a small smile. Sarah had been working there for a while, smart, kind, the type of person who actually listened when you talked. She wasn't flashy or dramatic, just real. The kind of woman who made you feel comfortable just by being around. "Something like that," I said, stretching. She laughed. "You know, there's this new steakhouse that just opened downtown. If you're going to be here late anyway, you might as well eat something decent." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking me out?" She shrugged, grinning. "Maybe." I thought about it for a second. Lisa had spent so much time thinking she had me figured out, thinking she was the one calling the shots. But she had been wrong about everything. And now? I was finally moving forward. Then I guess I'd better say yes. Lisa had lost everything. She lost her home, her security, the future she thought she was crafting. She lost the stability she had taken for granted, the life she had been so sure she could manipulate to fit her own needs. She lost Dr. Carter, the man she had risked it all for. She lost the career path she had carefully built, getting knocked down a few rungs instead of climbing higher. She had thought she was winning, but in the end, she had nothing. And me? I had everything. My peace, my freedom, my future. And maybe, just maybe, something new worth looking forward to. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was Jake right to play the long game instead of confronting Lisa immediately? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.